Hello, everyone. This is the first installment of Brainstorming High Growth, joined together with me, your producer, Aaron Heinekel, and John Rampton, the man, the myth, the legend. Uh, Two of us have been in the AI space for, what is it? I think I started in the AI space probably 6 years ago when the first OpenAI model came out, and I was using what was called talktotransformer.com, and we have come a long way, I can say that. And Rampton, if you want to give us yourself a little bit of an introduction.
Yeah, my name is John Rampton, and I've been in the AI space for I don't know, years. I always a tinker. I mean, much like you, probably listening to the podcast. I mean, you're interested in it. You're playing around with ChatGPT or Claude or this or that. Back in the day, they just had different names. So I've been a tinker, always messing around with different things, trying different things, and that's really kind of my background. So
But the goal of this podcast is we're going to be talking a lot about AI content and how it's changing the game with uh, SEO people, the SEO world, how search engines are changing, how um, we are adapting to these shifts in real time, and um, kind of hopefully we can try to predict a little bit of the future, maybe try to figure out the next trends and help you guys stay informed as well. But this podcast, we wanted to talk a little bit about the accuracy of AI generated content and um, why AI may not be the most accurate source of information, and how maybe we could figure out ways to improve uh, AI generated content through different means. So, first question I wanted to answer is, what is a general overview of how AI obtains information? How is AI actually generating information? I'm sure plenty of the listeners here probably already have a basic understanding, so I just wanted to maybe touch base and get a little bit more context behind uh, where AI and ChatGPT are coming up with all this stuff.
yeah, I mean, I could. This is a question that I get asked all the time. Like, where do these answers coming from? I'm typing in Chat GPT, and I just want to know where's it coming from. Well, there's computers out there that sit and read the internet and read every single thing that comes out, and they're processing that data and storing the data and trying to make sense of it. And that's basically is you're asking a question and they're trying to make the most sense of it. So it's based on data that's been downloaded, and it's going out and it's searching that and it's giving you the answer versus you having to type in and search on Google and look for the best result. It is giving you what it deems as the best result out there. So
Yeah, I
very,
think
very
an
simple way
interesting.
to look at it. But Aaron, I'd love to hear your thoughts because you're more on the technical side. Like, love to hear your thoughts on where it all comes from.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, which has sparked a lot of controversy and copyright concerns from a lot of different sources, you have the big New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI going on right now, is that AI is being trained on the subset of the internet. They have crawlers just like Google crawls the internet, and they're crawling every web page they can get and storing it into huge data sets of trillions of text documents. And just like any statistical model, the AI is just grabbing the average of all of that information when it's relaying that type of result. So, for example, when you ask ChatGPT about maybe more of a niche topic, so you ask about a specific vegetable. Let's ask it about carrots. What it's doing is it is looking at how many times carrots been mentioned in sentences throughout its entire data set, and predicting based on all those sentences what is the next best word to relay based on your question, your feedback, or whatever your prompt is. Of course, over time, with all this data of sentence structure and stuff, AI has just drastically improved. But the question is, what happens if everyone in the data sets is saying carrots are green? AI will say carrots are green just based on statistics. So that comes up an interesting dilemma of, you know, AI can process all this information a lot more quickly, but is it actually accurate?
I mean, that's a huge question. Going back to the New York Times thing, I think why it's so big, such a big deal. And by the way, it seems like they reached an agreement where they're licensing the content and stuff like that. So, it's interesting because they're going on, past information, whereas New York Times is current information and current data and current things that are actually happening right now. And a lot of AI is pulling from the past, right? It's saying
Yeah.
carrots are orange, carrots are orange. But what happens to data when people start saying carrots are green and every single person out there? And what can you do to manipulate an algorithm? There are ways to do it because SEO professionals, those listening right here, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys, there's black hat SEO that a lot of people get away with that for years and years and years and years, right? But what happens when a lot of people start saying things, or what happens when you have Republicans and Democrats saying two
Yeah.
opposite sides of the spectrum? What do you choose? That's why when you're typing in prompts into Claude and OpenAPI and all these things, you're usually giving very specific prompts like, hey, write this article in a very professional manner, or write this article from a doctor's perspective, or from this, because the answers are going to be very different based on who your personality or thing is. So, if you're a farmer and saying, oh, and it comes back, the carrot is green, I think you could figure out ways to manipulate that. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it
It's
almost
crazy what's
reminds
going
me
on.
of the early days of Google. You know what I mean? Where, you can just throw in a keyword 100,000 times and then you're going to get ranked probably pretty highly. I think it's a very similar thing with statistics, where, let's say carrots are green 1,000 times and you'll rank for the keyword, what are the color of carrots? And get to choose
Yeah.
what people see, which is Um, but I think you brought up an interesting point about the issue between dynamic versus static information. So static information is like something that won't be changed. Like, the color green is the color of grass, right? That piece of information is probably going to be the same for a very long period of time. But what do you do when you're talking about, celebrities and their current dealings, their relationships? That's an interesting thing that Google actually targeted in the last update. I don't know if Rampton, you had any thoughts about that issue
Yeah, I
between
mean,
dynamic and static.
I mean, yeah, they're putting priority on dynamic, but it's not just dynamic, it's on who's saying it. Are they credible? What's going on behind the scenes? They're starting to pay attention to this. I I really like Google is changing the game, and I think as content professionals and those listening to this, I think that Google is going to change dramatically so much in the next 2 to 3 years, let alone 2 to 3 months, but the next 2 to 3 years, I think, I mean, this is just my prediction and being very, very open. Like, I think websites in their current form are going to evolve and change and die in certain ways. Like, again, we kind of chatted about this a little bit before, and I pay attention to forums and conspiracy and things like that. But in in Google, when you're searching in the future, very, very near future, there is no need for them to direct you to any website out there ever again. Why?
That's sounds awesome, but it's also kind of scary.
It's also kind of scary and it's terrifying as a business owner who relies on Google traffic and relies on organic traffic. But have you noticed at the very top of Google how they're starting to summarize websites and summarize the queries that you're looking for? And as you start typing, they give you what you're already going to type. They're already queuing up that data behind the scenes, right? And what they're going to start doing is putting all the data on there and eliminating the need for you to ever go to a website again unless there's an ad involved. And what they're going to start doing is, in my opinion, this is just one man's humble opinion,
Your theory.
is they're going to start giving you every single search result, and they're going to start paying, having paid results have a lot wider of a spans, and you pay for that, and you pay for the best answers go to the top, sort of like the ads go to the top, and to get any traffic at all moving forward, you're going to have to pay for it. And that's how Google's going to become, instead of a multi-trillion, they become $100 trillion company. They take over the entire search atmosphere. And I could see this happening with AI because it's already happening.
It is already happening, and it brings a point to, what is the cost of accuracy and credibility right now? I mean, there is a price point right now where people
Yeah.
can spend to, manipulate and get in front of everyone else. It's pay to win in Google's minds, and Google's fine with that.
Yeah.
Um,
So by the way, so as marketers, continuing along that thought, as marketers, we need to be prepared for this and we need to learn the algorithm and how to train the algorithm to incorporate our results into those best things, putting together the best, most factual data in the most concise way possible. I think sometimes in the past, it's been putting together like 10,000 word guides. I think now it's obviously doing very informative content, but compartmentalizing that and putting that as concise as humanly possible to answer people's questions. So when you're typing into Google, look at the top 20 answers and answer those in the best way possible and train Google's algorithm to put you in that top spot. So that one, you're in the top spot, but when you pay for the top spot and you get the clickable top spot, you can start garnishing that traffic and those millions of page views. I think are just going to become easier and easier if you have trained it over the past, 1 to 2 years for your website.
so I think a big thing too is that AI is being retrained every year, every 6 months. All these models. I mean, they're retraining on new sets of information. We just saw Anthropic, which, if anyone doesn't know, that company just did a $100 million AI fund. But they're behind Claude, another chatbot competing against ChatGPT. And, they have all these models training on data from every 6 months, new sets of data. Claude trained on, I think, YouTube. So there's more controversy behind that because people are saying, oh, do you have access to and legal access to train on, YouTube's data? And every time these models train, they set in stone what information is true. So let's say a new news article comes out a month after the model is trained. The AI is not going to know about this new news that came out. You see this really interestingly with when you're actually doing research on companies that have changed their name. If you actually start talking about the new name of the company, you won't know the company unless you, like Twitter, for example, when they changed their name, the chatbots had no idea what X was. So I think a really big trend in is, this idea of internet real-time data plus these models. And the first, I guess, chatbot that really started with that was Perplexity. Have you tried Perplexity out, John?
Yeah, love it.
And Perplexity is kind of cool. You search it kind of like Google, and then automatically it's going to be searching the web for answers, getting that real-time data to inform its AI response. So I think that's going to be the winning formula is how do you have access to real-time data and infuse that real-time data with your past models. Thing is, it's expensive. It's expensive to crawl the internet. It's expensive
Yeah.
to do search results and do it for. I mean, every single time someone searches, you're gonna have to do a web search. That costs server stuff, server space,
Yeah.
compute.
Yeah, it's
But
kind of what's interesting about that is it does cost a lot, but some of the like I don't know if you caught the former CEO of IBM says, I think we'll augment our intelligence instead of it being artificial intelligence. It's we're augmenting our own intelligence.
what does that mean? Like we'll be a part of it.
Yeah, it's basically it's changing us. It's changing what intelligence means to us because it's reading it and it's helping us make better decisions in its own mind. But all this data all going out there, all of this information that it's gathering, it's telling us what intelligence is, what the answers are. But what's scary about that is kind of what we were alluding to earlier. Is it getting it right?
Yeah,
It's
I do
and
have a
again,
question though for
the
you.
CEO
I
of
have a
IBM,
question.
it's augmenting our intelligence. It's changing our own intelligence to what it thinks it should be.
Do you think, as someone who hires a lot of content writers and has for the past 15 years and dealt with a lot of this stuff, do you think AI is becoming smarter than, your average writer? Is this a trend that's happening where, I mean, AI can't really do research, so that brings the point where, they're not actually fact checking. AI doesn't fact check. But
Yeah.
sometimes I have ad writers who don't even fact check their content either.
Well, I mean, research is also in its own way, like people are going for their own hypothesis in research and forming their own conclusions about research. So that's the great thing about artificial intelligence is you could collect a bunch of research and say, help me make sense of this, and it will give you what it thinks is the objective, right? Versus researchers have their own objectives in mind and they're trying to prove them right. I think artificial intelligence is using previous data. It's not creating its own data yet. It's pulling on intelligence of other people, making sense of it, and bringing it to light, not
So I
creating
think
its own. But again,
that
in the
is
future, it could potentially create its own.
that is a really
Think if you're a
important point.
lawyer and you're like, oh, go out and we want to find something new. And it takes all the court cases and it's like, none of this makes sense.
The
Like, why
people who
don't you write it
control
in
the
this way?
data control what the AI is going to generate and then what people are informed on. You know,
Yes.
let's say we
And
both two
and
people.
let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay,
The people controlling the data are what? Who are they?
okay, Google,
They're
big tech.
white. They're white. They're male. They're 44, or really 20 to 44 years old. Are majority of the people writing the code.
Yep,
So, not saying that demographic is immature, but they're white, immature males.
yep.
And, they don't write things from other perspectives. They don't write from a female's perspective. So, are you going to trust an algorithm that is written by a certain demographic of people? Now, I'm not saying that's the end all say all. I'm just saying Silicon Valley, aka Google, and a lot of this are being written, and the code is being dictated by a certain demographic of people. And maybe it's not white, but it for sure is male because majority of programmers out there are male. It's a male dominated thing. So can it see from a woman's perspective? By the way, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just looking at statistics and looking at the amount of coders that are in a certain demographic that I'm talking about. And
Well, yeah,
I think
that's
that
that's
it could create really screwed up algorithms that hurt a certain demographic or nation.
well. There's two sides of it. There's the coders who are choosing what data sources to put into these models. They can put Wikipedia, they can put um, this X number of sites, they can put this Y number of sites. They get to choose what sites they want to crawl. Maybe some of it's going to be a big, broad information, but there's definitely focuses on what these models are choosing. Like, I think Claude chose YouTube so they could be more conversational, more of a informal AI. But that brings to question, when it's training on a bunch of YouTube content, it's training on a bunch of people who are probably not credible sources for the most part. But then, on the other hand, if you train only from credible sources, I bet a lot of these credible sources all have their own biases. You have all these think tanks, all of these different research facilities that are doing research, but sometimes research can be focused on getting a certain claim out there.
Yeah.
If I had a certain point of view, let me go fund some research about this and then deliver that research and then have people write news about that research. Now it's solidified into credible publications that are now the coders are taking and training.
Yep.
So
Also, what happens? We talked about New York Times suing OpenAI. Now they came to an agreement, but what happens when places like in the past, Canada, now we're in the United States, but Canada came and said, you can't republish media articles on Facebook. So what did Facebook do? Can't see it. Can't see it on Facebook anymore. Can't reshare news articles from Canada. Toronto Star, sorry, you're gone. All the publications are gone. What happens when the New York Times sues OpenAI or they get sick of paying OpenAI or New York Times money, and OpenAI just takes out that perspective? They're just like, oh, we're not going to crawl that anymore. We're not going to take that perspective. We're not going to take that data. Or Harvard says, sorry, no access to our information, and they cut that off. What does that do to the algorithm? What does that do to biases? If New York Times is the only one saying carrots are orange and it's recent factual data, I'm not saying everything on there is factual, but general sense,
I
we're
think most
taking
of the
this.
journalists are trying to make everything
They're trying,
factual.
there's journalistic integrity. They're trying to be the best out there that they can, right? What happens when these companies do this and they say you can't use it anymore and they cut it off?
Well,
What happens to the algorithm? What happens to us using all this? It would significantly be a setback in not OpenAI, not people searching, not data, not anything, but accuracy of recency, kind of recency bias and recent data, the most factual data.
I mean, you can take out point of views. I think another interesting element is how Google was focusing on Reddit, which is, anybody can say anything on Reddit. There's absolutely nothing stopping people. I think there was a lot of backlash when AI overviews came out because people wrote funny comments on some Reddit post and thought they were goofballs, and then it showed up, like, I think one of them was like how to cure a cold, and it was like drink gasoline or something crazy like that, and that was what AI was showing because it was what the data was informing. So
Yep.
of course, most people are going to see that and be like, yeah, something's wrong here. There's a glitch. But there's always that 1%. There's always that very small minority of people who are like, okay, let me try this out. And that's dangerous.
Well, again, it's dangerous, but at the same time, AI has to predict that you and me are different, and your version of the truth and my version of the truth are two different things. So AI also needs to adjust for the person. Black, white, Asian, Mexican, I would imagine if you're searching for something in Russia and you're asking questions to OpenAI or ChatGPT, it would hopefully take factual information given the geographical region. Like it would say, you could ask it, what's going on with the war right now? It's not going to say from a Ukrainian's perspective, it's going to say from a Russian's perspective.
Yeah.
So there are other factual things that are factual for one person, but not factual for another person.
So I got
So I
two
think,
things for that. So
yeah,
one, I think Google has done a really good job of showing opinions. So they'll show up a set of opinions
yeah,
on Google News and give you, okay, here are
yep.
all the perspectives. But also brings up the point of what's causing those information sources to go there. Is it engagement, you think?
Oh, that's above my pay grade, unfortunately. I think, yes, engagement. I think there's a lot more other metrics. For example, credibility behind the scenes, how much credibility an author has. If we notice in the last Google or one of the last Google algorithmic updates, um, that they're prioritizing real people and, you know, factual information from those people and history behind those, LinkedIn's behind those, followers behind those, how many people say they're credible, and that makes them more credible, and let's highlight them bigger and bigger and bigger. So
But you're bringing up the
I,
point
I
for
think
like
I
Russia versus
go ahead.
American news. You know what I mean? Like, do you think since people in Russia are engaging more with sources that are in their perspective, that they're
I
going
think it
to,
has to be geolocated.
yeah,
So I think it has to be, facts are based on where you live, not based on factual information. Just like if you're pro Trump or pro Biden, it doesn't matter when you're asking a question about abortion. It might factor in your search history and your followers, and your information behind you to give you the most factual information on whether abortion is right or wrong from your perspective. And
right.
it would filter the results that you're more likely to click on and view and integrate into you. Just like Facebook's algorithm is based on how much time you search, whether you go to profiles, where you go, you start getting skewed news towards you. AI is going to get to that perspective.
I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit. We're talking a little bit about, I mean, so much uncertainty, so much uh, craziness
By the
going
way,
on.
I gotta run really quick. I have somebody waiting in the office. They've been here for
Yeah.
15. So this is great info.